Whatever happened to Silverchair, from teenage rock gods to total silence? When Silverchair burst onto the scene in the mid-90s, they were hailed as Australia's answer to Nirvana, a trio of teenagers who sounded like they'd lived 1,000 lifetimes of angst. Their debut album, Frog Stomp, exploded onto the charts, turning Daniel Johns, Ben Gillies, and Chris Jonah into international rock stars before they were even old enough to vote. But then, like smoke in a summer breeze, they disappeared. So what happened? How did one of the biggest young bands of the 90s go from selling millions of records to complete radio silence? Stick around as we unpack the rise, reinvention, and mysterious fall of Silverchair, Australia's grunge prodigies who grew up in public and left it all behind on their own terms. In 1995, the world met a band that seemed too young to sound that heavy. Silverchair's debut album, Frog Stomp, was released when frontman Daniel Johns and his bandmates were just 15 years old. The single Tomorrow was already a hit in Australia, but then it crossed over to the US. It hit number 1 on the Billboard Modern Rock charts. The Frog Stomp album sold over 4 million copies worldwide, putting Silverchair in the same breath as Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, except these guys were still attending high school. Critics called them a Nirvana knockoff, but fans didn't care. Their brooding lyrics and sludgy riffs connected with a generation still grieving Kurt Cobain. Silverchair had arrived, and the world expected them to stay. Rather than repeat Frog Stomp's formula, Silverchair grew up fast. Their 1997 sophomore album, Freak Show, was darker, more complex, and more personal. Tracks like Abuse Me and Cemetery hinted at Daniel Johns' internal struggles. The band was evolving, and the fans stayed with them. Freak Show went platinum in Australia and gold in the US. But it was 1999's Neon Ballroom that marked a creative turning point. It introduced orchestration, piano, and lyrical depth that stunned critics. Songs like Anna's song Open Fire chronicled Daniel's struggle with anorexia, a raw confession that earned praise for its honesty. The album went double platinum in Australia and was another global success, but the cost was mounting. Daniel Johns later revealed he developed severe anxiety, depression, and eating disorders during the time. The fame that gave him a voice was now taking a toll. By 2002, Silverchair was unrecognizable in a good way. Their fourth album, Diorama, was a bold, orchestral dreamscape, co-produced by legendary Beach Boys collaborator Van Dyke Parks. Diorama was ambitious, theatrical, and wildly creative. It earned 6 ARIA Awards in Australia and solidified Daniel Johns as one of the country's most innovative songwriters. But it also marked the start of the end for the band's public presence. Johns developed reactive arthritis, which forced him to cancel tours. The music was better than ever, but the band was fraying under pressure, fame, and illness. In 2007, Silverchair returned with Young Modern. It was a vibrant, polished, and packed with alt-pop bangers like Straight Lines, which became their first Australian #1 single in over a decade. The album debuted at #1 and won 6 more ARIA Awards. On paper, it was a triumphant comeback. But behind the scenes, things weren't so smooth. Tensions within the band had grown. Creative differences were mounting. Johns was becoming increasingly interested in solo work and collaborations outside of the band's rock roots. After touring for Young Modern, Silverchair went on an indefinite hiatus in 2011. They said they were drifting apart creatively. In 2020, Daniel Johns made it clear there would be no reunion. I have zero emotional attachment to Silverchair, he said in an interview. I honestly wouldn't get Silverchair back together for $1 million. So where are they now? Daniel Johns has released a couple of solo albums, including the 2022 record Future Never, a bold and genre-blending project that topped Australian charts. He's opened up about his mental health battles and continues to explore music on his own terms. Ben Gillies, the drummer, and Chris Jono, the bassist, have pursued side projects and recently launched a podcast together titled Too Much Information, where they share stories from their Silverchair days and beyond. Both have expressed disappointment in John's distancing from the band, but they also seem to be moving on. As for a reunion, highly unlikely. The wounds seem too deep, and Daniel Johns has stated firmly that chapter is closed. Silverchair's story is more than just a tale of teenage fame. It's a rare look at what happens when kids are thrust into the adult world of music, money, and media. They went from garage band to grunge royalty before they could even drive. They reinvented themselves multiple times while navigating chronic illness, addiction, and artistic evolution. They sold over 10 million albums worldwide, won 21 ARIA awards, and redefined what a young band could be. But in the end, what made Silverchair special, Daniel Johns' intensity, vision, and vulnerability, was also what tore them apart. Maybe that's the real legacy. They walked away before they could become a nostalgia act. They burned bright, grew up in real time, and then disappeared. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, share your favorite Silverchair track in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the music. Until next time, keep the volume loud and your mind open.